All right. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. We are very glad that you could join us today. My name is Paula Newcomb, and I'm the Northeast Regional Coordinator for the Indiana State Library. I will be the host and question moderator for today's session, How to Speak with Your Boss. So just a couple announcements to register for other webinars or other trainings available from the Professional Development Office. Please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website, www.in.gov/library. For a full list of our current and in-person training menu, please see our continuing education website. This session will be about an hour, so you'll receive one LU for this presentation. And if you are watching an archive recording of this webinar, instructions on how to obtain your LU are in the video's description on YouTube. Or you can also find those instructions on Indiana State Library's continuing education website under the LEU policies. So we are going to be going through some general situations that you might encounter, and our panelists are going to refer to a general scenario and then give their advice. So again, and questions, I've put this together. If you want to add questions, I think you can do this throughout the presentation. I'm not going to show your questions till we get to the very, very end. But if you want to add any further questions that you didn't think about and you don't want to put them in the chat, you just go to www.menti.com. You could do that on a phone, tablet, if you can on your computer. And then that will be the code that you would use. You type that in. I'm going to have that on every screen. So if something sparks an idea, you can go ahead and put that into that poll, and we'll check that out at the end. So today, our panelists, we are very, very fortunate to have these people. We've got Chris Scandling from he's the director of the Bremen Public Library. Donna Seaton, she is the training specialist, HR person at Evansville Vanderburgh Public Library. Jason Fields, the director of the Nappanee Public Library, and Lynn Hobbs, the director of the Pendleton Community Public Library. So very thankful that you could be here today as our panelists. So we're going to start off with the scenarios. And also, I guess I should refer back also to, we did ask a survey when you registered that if you had a question, we had about 6 different questions, and actually some of them are kind of similar, but I think throughout the presentation, we're actually going to kind of refer probably a little bit to those questions, or you might get some of your answers when you're listening to this presentation. So we're going to start off with this first one. How to talk with your boss if you want a promotion. So I've got a scenario to go along with that. Kelly has worked at the library for about 10 years, and all of her reviews have been good. She feels that she is due for a promotion and wants to talk to her boss about it, but she is not sure how to go about requesting a promotion. So either Chris or Donna, whoever would like to start. Maybe Chris, if you want to unmute, if you're muted.
I think I'm good to go. So it's nice to be with everyone. Thank you for having me. So in regards to the scenario that we have, regardless of whether a promotion ends up being offered by the boss, I would encourage the individual to request a meeting and to come prepared. 10 years is a substantial body of work from which to draw a wealth of examples of positive performance. However, it can be easy to forget various talking points in the nervousness of a face-to-face session. Sometimes we find ourselves leaving gatherings such as these thinking, oh, I can't believe I forgot to mention that. Not that there won't be future opportunities, but there's a lot to be said when it comes to seizing the moment. Furthermore, one shouldn't necessarily assume that the boss is going to remember all of the details spanning back from a decade's worth of performance reviews, especially when factoring in organization size and the number of staff they might be keeping track of. My hope would be that during these regular periods of evaluation, the boss has inquired as to what the employee's career aspirations are. From there, what developmental steps are necessary to achieve goals. Especially, we're talking about essentially, there's mutually agreed upon boxes to check off in order to climb up that proverbial ladder. This way, all parties are on the same page and working in unison for the benefit of both sides. If a paper document is provided at the time of reviews, make note of scores that were given and any type of commentary provided. List continuous learning, professional development opportunities that have been taken advantage of. That could be webinars, educational classes that have been attended and completed, conferences attended. Also, if you have an immediate supervisor who is willing to go to bat for you, that's another item to enlist in your tool belt. Sometimes a boss is so ensconced in their office, they aren't witness to those day-to-day items that keep businesses running smoothly and efficiently. So someone like a department head who is more in the thick of things on an everyday basis can serve as a valuable resource in making the case for your promotion. At the very least, I would say having a conversation with your boss will put this request on the radar. And while I wouldn't recommend pestering your boss every month, I would recommend staying patiently persistent as you go about strengthening your case further.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. We'll go ahead to Donna. And maybe unmute if you're muted.
I'm trying to get unmuted. Yeah, Chris, thanks. And thank you for having me. I really feel fortunate and honored to be on this panel. Chris, that was great. The only thing I might add just a little bit is maybe sometimes before you go into the promotion act, maybe reflect a little bit about why you want that promotion. Give it some thought. I think sometimes you go into the promotion and you know you want it, but you really need to kind of step back and think about why you want that promotion. What's your motive for it? Is it money, more money? Is it more power? Or is it that you see where there's a role needed in the system and you feel like you could help and you could create something? So, and when you do, like Chris said, have your homework, do your research. It could be anything, projects you assisted on. If you were in like help with a staff day or help with something in the library system, did outreach, anything like that, those count. When you volunteer, they also look at that, because those kind of count in it too. It kind of gives them your interest in what your spectrum is. So I'd say, do a little research first, have your homework done. And I think too, don't go in, again, get a meeting, have things together, but don't go in expecting to be promoted. I think basically what you're going to do is just kind of plant a seed and then go from there. And like Chris said, just be patient with it. Just, and not keep at them, but and then if things, add on to it, in time, as you've been there a while, you haven't heard anything, then re-meet again and readdress it.
Okay, these are great ideas. Also, yeah, definitely advocate for yourself. And if you can, and if it is all possible, hopefully you will get that promotion. Does Lynn and Jason, do you have any extra things to add to that before we go on to the next one?
Nope.
Nope.
It's a good answer. It's a
Sounds
good answer.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go on to number 2. So how to talk with your boss when you have an idea. So our scenario is Susan has come up with what she feels is a very good idea and is very excited to get it started. She has suggested other ideas and not felt like she had been heard or acknowledged for her ideas. She is not sure how to approach her boss about this idea. So we've got Jason and Lynn. So Jason, you want to start?
Sure. So when I was thinking about this scenario, I thought covering your basics with the idea is a good place to start. So you want to answer for yourself the basic questions that we always think of: who, what, when, where, and how. So if you just get a sheet of paper or open up your document and type answers to those questions, what you have at the end of that is the beginning of a plan. So start with that. Another thing to think about is when you approach your boss, think about how they like to receive information. Is a written plan best? Do they like having a conversation? Those kinds of things. So if you have someone who has the same supervisor, you might chat with them and see what method they've used when they've had their idea brought up to the boss and accepted. Another thing to think about is if you, in Susan's case, if Susan has great ideas and presents them and they don't get picked up, or people don't seem excited about them, another thing to consider is the approach that you've taken in the past. So if something hasn't worked, you might try something different when approaching your boss with that idea that you're excited about.
Okay, guess we go on to Lynn.
So I think the first thing Susan has going for her in this particular scenario is that she's excited about it. She's got enthusiasm. So you really want to make sure that you come in with that contagious enthusiasm when you approach your boss, because it's a lot easier to say no when someone's just kind of and maybe unsure about it than when they come in and they're super excited. So if you're confident in your idea and excited about it, make sure that that really comes through in your ask. And think about the type of idea that you have. Is your idea going to solve a problem? If so, explain what the problem is and how your idea solves it. Is your idea filling a need? What is that need? And how is your idea fulfilling that need? So think a little bit more about what sort of the roots are of your idea and why you came up with it in the first place. So you want to be able to explain your idea very clearly, just like Jason said, make sure everything is charted out, what it's going to look like, but make sure that you're also focused on the benefit of what's going to occur when this idea takes shape and takes place and is implemented. You want to make sure that you are taking accountability for your idea. So if implementing your idea means that 6 people have to do something and none of them is you, that's probably not awesome. You want to make sure that you're a part of implementing the idea, that you are willing to do the work. Since Susan has had this problem of not being heard or acknowledged in the past, I think it's a good idea for her to ask at the end of the meeting if she can follow up in a week or so to see if her boss has any questions or would like to add anything to what Susan has already come up with. That way you've got some, concrete day or at least a method of follow-up, so it's not just going to be dead in the water. But also understand if the answer is no, the answer may just be no. So if the answer is no, you may want to respond with, hey, is there anything I can do to get to a yes? Can we work on this together to kind of tweak it? But if the answer is no, then sometimes you just have to take it.
Great ideas. Yeah. All right, we'll go on to our next one. So how to talk with your boss when you have a workflow problem. So I'll go through this scenario. So Erin has noticed that a certain way that a task is being done is slowing things down in the processing of new items. And since it was the boss's idea in the beginning, they are not sure how to talk to them about it. So we've got Chris and Lynn. So Chris, want to start with that? Oh, and also Donna, I think, is on this.
Okay. So ego issue aside, the end goal of any proceeding should always be doing what is in the best interest of the organization. So kudos to the boss for initially recognizing a task that needed a workable solution. And let's go so far as to say that maybe this way of doing things was successful for a period of time. That doesn't mean that the wheel can't be tinkered with or even reinvented as matters of efficiency enter the equation. As you think about addressing the situation with your boss, confer with your peers. Perhaps they have observed similar deficiencies in the process. If they are unfamiliar with the process, consider using them as a sounding board to identify what works and what could potentially be improved upon. It's also possible that alternative ways have been examined in the past. While flawed, it could be that the boss's system still is the one that yields the best results. Chances are, if you've observed a workflow occurrence that you perceive as lacking, you've undoubtedly given thoughts to how do I remedy this? Improvement will necessitate putting together a plan of action, which is going to be clearly defined steps. An open-minded boss is going to be receptive to ideas and want to hear what you have in mind. So take the time not only to research, but test some theories. Sometimes what looks great on paper doesn't always translate to those live action circumstances. I would also advocate subscribing to listservs because there are a host of seasoned professionals that are going to be right at your fingertips. And there's groups on everything from book clubs, friends of the library, e-resources, marketing, trustees, and that list just goes on and on. It's a platform that provides a gathering place to discuss best practices, programs, services, success stories, and then stories that aren't so successful. I've relied on these forums in many instances, both as a question asker and as a question responder. Bottom line, what I would say is by doing your homework and working in conjunction with your boss, productivity can be reached, which is the win-win that everyone is looking for.
Okay, great. Well, next to Lynn.
So I would say before you approach your boss with any problem or any, you've got to have some kind of a proposed solution. So even if you're at a total loss of how to solve this problem, because it's a workflow issue and maybe you've tried a bunch of things and nothing is working, then just say that up front. I've been thinking really hard about how to fix this. I would love to bring a suggestion to you, but I am really just at a total loss. So like Chris said, confer with your coworkers, brainstorm what might work, and understand that your boss may not have the step-by-step understanding of the workflow problem that you're trying to address, which may be part of the problem with why their solution isn't working as well, but you don't want to be critical of their solution. I'll talk about that in just one second. So if there are several people involved in the process of this workflow and you're all feeling the same way, in this particular scenario, I don't think there's any harm in bringing one other coworker with you who is on the same page as you, recognizes this problem, to talk about this with the boss. You don't want it to make it feel like you're ganging up on them, but it's not just you having this issue, that it really is a department-wide problem, and sort of here's what you're thinking with your coworkers. It's really sensitive to criticize an idea that was your boss's, and obviously that's part of the problem with this particular scenario, is it was the boss's idea in the beginning. So just like any other conversation where you may have to deliver sort of bad news, try to find the positives. Try to find the positives about what does work with their workflow solution, if anything does. Be appreciative that they even contributed and try to improve the workflow, even if it's not working. But be constructive in explaining how it could be better if you have those ideas. Just remember, your boss wants you to be productive. So they should really appreciate you bringing these ideas to your attention. Just make sure you can clearly explain what the problem is and what your proposed solution is if you have it. And once again, like I mentioned earlier, make sure that you are willing to take the accountability to make sure that you personally are working towards that solution and not just dumping it on somebody else's lap. Also, you may want to take into consideration that sometimes there are costs associated with the solution. It may be financial, it may be staffing, whatever it is. That's your boss's job to figure out what resources are needed to implement this change. And so again, the answer may be no, or it may just need to be tweaked a little bit. So with any idea or solution, be willing to take feedback and tweak your idea so that you can compromise if needed and hopefully arrive at the best solution.
Okay, great. And then like we got Donna also.
Only thing I have to add, really great feedback, but I think that mainly if you're going through it, like Lynn had said, go to it in a team working it out kind of way. I think with the managers, if you can kind of make it a team effort, that kind of goes. And also to point out the positives and be thankful for them trying to come up with a solution, But the other thing too is, and I think sometimes we tend to forget this, is if you get the go ahead for this idea, if it doesn't work out, own up to it and look at it and retweak it. But the other thing, if it does work, don't drop the ball, stay with it. That happens a lot of times. I've seen in the past where they get the idea and they don't check on it, make sure things are going well, they don't follow up, and they kind of drop the ball. And so in that way, that's how ideas, they can keep being tweaked and rearranged and worked on. And it also goes to show what you've done and kind of helps you with that promotion and what you can put in there in the future, So yeah, I'd say just make sure if you're got the go ahead to stick with it. And then if it doesn't work out, own up and see what you can do.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, guys. All right, we'll head on to number 4. How do you talk with your boss when you have a problem with another staff member? Definitely tricky. So with the scenario, Mark has been very frustrated and felt that others, as well as he, have had to cover and do more than their share of work because their coworker is not doing their job. He is not sure how to address this problem. I've got Jason and Chris, so I'll go ahead on to Jason.
Sure. The first advice I have is to take a step back and identify the source of the frustration. Is it truly the person? Is it a resource problem that the person has to deal with? And so forth. So just take the time to be absolutely certain what the cause of this frustration is. And if it truly is another staff member, you can move ahead in that vein. When you're describing the problem with the other staff member, my advice is to try and stay objective and relate the needs of the department and the needs of the workflow and keep it out of the personal realm as much as you can. If it's the way the staff member is doing a certain task, for example, explain why that impedes the work getting done, rather than making a personal reference or attack or, whatever. Try and keep it positive with the needs of the organization in mind, rather than your personal feelings. And as has been mentioned in prior questions, try to come up with a solution. What if the problem is related to a person? What's your suggestion for fixing that, helping this person succeed or helping the particular workflow be better in relation to the staff member? But again, my chief advice is to try to stay objective, even though it does involve another person. That might be frustrating.
Okay, all right, thanks. How about Chris?
It was great advice, Jason. Some of what I will say will reiterate that. I think most of us have had the experience, whether it be reflecting on group projects when we were in school, a previous or current job, where we find ourselves carrying what's perceived as an unbalanced portion of the workload. That can bring about an array of emotions, not only frustration, but anxiety, and then resentment are just a stone's throw away. Pretty soon, you're going to have an individual who is disenchanted with the job, and they're looking through the want ads for another place to collect their paychecks. I would say that building-wide harmony is one of the toughest managerial balancing acts to achieve. You're taking a collection of personalities and trying to steer everybody in a common direction. Human nature being what it is, there are constant forces that are at work that can easily disrupt the waters that we're trying to navigate as a team. The great news from what I found in nearly 10 years of working in public libraries is that library folks are employed in this profession because we firmly believe in the mission of libraries. The buy-in factor is easy to sell. To achieve this, however, that means that we all need to work as a cohesive unit, as I mentioned, teamwork. While I wouldn't label this as an easy conversation to have, because being the bearer of negative news is rarely going to be on anyone's fun list, it doesn't have to be awkward. The dialogue should be straightforward and honest. Having a strong work ethic is a prized commodity, in my opinion, and those who have it will usually go many extra miles, even when it means covering that neglect exhibited by others. Sometimes we could say it's just part of our DNA. It's woven into the fabric of our well-being. I find myself in that camp. So if we're told, hey, don't work so hard, that would leave us, me personally, I would be in a state of shock. There are limits though, and it's part of a boss's responsibility to ensure that an employee's plate does not become too full. As is often the case, there are those who just won't speak up, and they will continue to pile on more and more responsibilities. Not only do they then become silently overtaxed, invariably what's going to happen is their previous stellar performance is going to suffer. And cracks in the foundation may not be noticed until there's a breaking point. I would say instead of shouldering all of these added shares, discuss with your boss what you feel is reasonable to expect with these tasks. If they are not divided up fairly, how might they be better distributed? Frame your conversation not in a way to finger point, but being frank. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm capable of doing. And can we examine the situation to ensure that the entire team is managing equal parts of the process? Encourage the boss to speak with other team members to gain their perspective. If possible, I would refrain from speaking on other people's behalf unless you are in a group meeting with the boss, because it's too easy for a pattern of that he said, she said to develop, and then all of a sudden you've got a more complicated situation at hand. By bringing this issue to your boss's attention sooner rather than later, you're going to save on potentially angst-ridden happenings down the line.
Great. I saw lots of head shaking. If you have anything else to add, go for it. If not, we'll go to the next one. Anybody? No? Yeah, very important. All right, well, we're getting down to our last few. This one is how to talk with your boss when you cannot talk with your boss. So the scenario we've got here, or I guess we kind of have, this is not necessarily a scenario, I guess. You go ahead, and we've got Donna on here. Go ahead, Donna.
Hi, this one's a tough one. I will say this, this one is kind of more of a situation by situation, and actually to the alignment of your library or you're in an organization. So basically though, what I'd say first is really think about why you feel you cannot talk to your boss. Look at that, start from the beginning. Just really look into yourself and say, why do I feel like I can't talk to my boss? And if you've talked to your boss before, think about that previous conversation. How did that go? How was it set up? Did you ask for a meeting or did you just go in? Did you wait until it was an appropriate time? And a lot of times what you really want to do is kind of see how your boss relates to things and how they take information in and how to have a conversation with them. And I think sometimes if you kind of step back, I know a lot of times when you go into your boss, sometimes it is, whether it's for a promotion or it's that you have an idea or that there's a problem, it's emotional, because you are feeling either enthusiastic or wanting something or troubled about something. So there is emotion involved. And I think sometimes when you go in, that becomes the front. And I think sometimes when you do go into a boss, you have to kind of sometimes put that aside. And it's hard, it's not easy, but you really have to think of this as bringing something to your boss and realizing that you have to kind of feel out how you're going to do it before you just go in. In anything you do, you have to kind of feel the field. And so sometimes that may be the reason you're having trouble where you can't talk with your boss. Now, okay, you've thought about it. You've done what you thought was the best way to talk to your boss, and you still feel like you can't talk to your boss. Then you may want to look at, again, one, the situation, what's going on that you want to talk to your boss about. And two, who would be the next person that would be wise to maybe talk about this? If that gets into a really, I know, sticky situation, and it depends on your organization sometimes. Some have a grievance, some have HR, some have, actually I've met some systems that actually had a lineup, and this was pretty good. If you couldn't talk to this person, this is the next person you could go to and talk to. It actually gave the staff a kind of excuse me, a ladder, you might say, to have conversations. If you couldn't feel like you could have a conversation with your boss, well, then you have this person you could go to. And sometimes it's the personalities. I mean, I'm just going to say it. Sometimes it's your personality and that boss's personality. They just don't always, jive. And so I think sometimes having another person that you're able to go to might work out. You might check with your organization, and that might be a question you can ask your organization. Just if I can't talk to my boss, what is the best options? What can I do? Present it to the I don't know, admin, HR, whatever your system has, present it to them. Ask if there's a way to go to the next person if you're having some trouble, or you're having where you feel like you cannot talk with your boss.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Also, make sure I wrote in there earlier roundtables. If you're in a roundtable group that you can go to, or but maybe sometimes these things you would not put on a listserv because they're too sensitive, and your boss might actually see it on a listserv. So, all right, well, we'll go to, or I think it might be our last one. How not to talk with your boss. We've got Lynn and Donna on here. We'll go ahead. How about we start with Lynn and then we'll end with Donna?
Okay, sure. So I think it was Jason maybe who said early on that it's really good to understand how your boss likes to receive information. And so it's just also really good to try and just understand your boss as well as you can, as a person, as a human, as a coworker, because when you approach them, the do's and don'ts may change depending on their personality and their style of management. So I've got kind of a list of things to not do, but I want to try to frame them as positively as I can. So the first is like, don't just pop in. Now, some bosses always have a door open policy. And if you've got a quick question, that's a 2-minute deal, no problem. But if you just had a patron chew you out at the front desk and you're super emotional about it and you're crying, don't pop in and plop yourself down on the side chair and give your boss an earful just out of the clear blue. Okay. So, make sure that if it's something you really need to discuss with your boss, that you are scheduling time, you're asking them to set aside time. If you have an idea of how long it will take, can I talk with you for about 20 minutes about something? That's helpful as well. So just give them a basic idea of what you want to talk about so they are not totally taken off guard. And that helps to give you a little bit of framework as well, so you're not just starting from scratch. So don't pop in. And like my example of, getting overly or being emotional because maybe a patron just chewed you out or whatever, you want to make sure you keep your emotions in check. So don't go in overly angry about something or overly sad about something. Practice if you think that this is a conversation that you are not able to have without those emotions coming into play. Practice a couple times to see if you can check those emotions. And if you're pretty sure you're not going to be able to, I think then it's worth an introduction. Tell your boss, this is really hard for me to talk about. I'm sorry, it's an emotional issue for me. I'm going to do my best to explain what I can, but I may get emotional. Be prepared to be emotional. If you think you're going to start crying, bring tissues, and recognize when your emotions have made it really not possible to move forward in a positive way, that your emotions have taken over and have really precluded the meaning of the meeting in the first place. Because it's also uncomfortable for your boss to be sitting there while you're, crying or angry or having a hard time. I understand emotions can be very, very hard to check, but with some bosses, that may completely change their opinion of you. I'm sorry to say. So just try to keep those emotions in check as much as you can. Don't lie. That seems like a no-brainer, but I fired several people because they've been caught in a lie in a meeting with me, whether they're afraid they're going to get in trouble, so they're covering something up, or whatever the reason is for the lie. Don't lie. I know that seems really duh, but yeah, don't lie. Be very frank. Be prepared. Bring a notebook so you can write things down. Practice, like I mentioned, practice what you want to say, anticipate what their responses might be and what your responses to that might be, so that you can have a nice, organized meeting within that time frame that you hope to set aside at the very beginning. Don't be terribly vague. If you're complaining about a coworker, for example, and your boss says, well, can you give me an example of when that happened? And you have no examples, that's not helpful. So you want to have examples that illustrate what you need to talk about so that your boss can really understand with concrete examples of what is actually going on and what they need to address. Don't play the blame game. Don't blame coworkers. Even if you really truly believe something is their fault, try to frame it in a positive way. Don't blame your boss, even if they've totally messed something up. Take your own personal accountability for something. So just try to explain what happened as well as you can without playing the blame game, because that does not look good. Always be constructive in trying to solve a problem. Stick to facts rather than emotions. Your emotions should not be the focus of the conversation. You don't want to come in and just dump a problem on your boss's lap without any sort of a proposed solution. We've talked about this before earlier today. So just make sure that you've got some good ideas for how you can maybe solve a problem rather than just coming in overly emotional. Here's my problem, you fix it. That's your job. That's your pay grade. Don't give your boss ultimatums or put unnecessary demands on them. You don't know what their job is like. You don't know what their workload is like. You don't know what's happened earlier on in that day. So just try and work with them rather than telling them, if you don't do this and this and this, then I'm going to leave. Because when you put an ultimatum on that, like that on your boss, and it's like, if you don't do this, I'm going to leave, chances are fine, you can leave. You don't put an ultimatum like that on me. So be careful about any kind of ultimatum or demand you're putting on. Don't be overly tenacious. I know we like tenacious employees. We like people to get things done. We like them to have ideas and, take the ball and run with it. But again, if the answer is no, the answer is no. Don't keep on and on and on and on. I liked, Chris, I can't remember what you said, patiently persistent when it came to asking for the raise. I think that's a really, really good phrase, patiently persistent, not overly tenacious. And finally, don't ignore advice or guidance for the next steps. If you've come in with a problem or a situation and your boss says, well, here's what I think we can do this, 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 and you don't do any of that, you have not helped your case at all. If you genuinely want to come to a solution or fix a problem, and that's why you've approached your boss, make sure that you're taking their guidance and their advice. And again, that you just haven't gone in overly emotional, looking for an opportunity to vent. And now that that's done, you're done too. So make sure you follow through, take accountability.
Okay, and Donna.
I think Lynn covered pretty much all of it. Good job. No, when she kept bringing up emotions, I will say this, and I used to even say it to others. I've kind of coached others on doing, going in and talking, but I always say, get your inner Spock going and put the emotions aside and go that way. It's hard, but when you go to have a conversation with your boss, like Lynn said, if you start the emotions up, it's kind of a two-way mirror. The emotions just start going and the conversation doesn't really work. It just doesn't work out. So I think if you can just find your inner Spock and just put those emotions aside. You have to be from the Star Trek time to get that, I guess. The other thing I would say is, remember when you go into the conversation, respect. Have respect. Go in that, when you talk to your boss, don't talk at your boss. Talk to your boss. Have respect. And if you hope them to be open, you also be open. I think that sometimes we want to go in and we want the boss to be open. I was a supervisor for 20 years. So, you have that expectation, but also in the same instance, I think you also have to be open. If you go in to talk to them, be open. Be open to any, like Lynn said, suggestions, comments, just be open. And sometimes you can go in and you can learn a lot from the conversation, and so can they. You can learn like how your boss listens, how you can be heard. You can learn how maybe even to have a better conversation with your boss. So, just be open. And
Okay.
Good luck with everything.
All right. Thanks so much. This has been awesome, awesome advice. Even though we still have some more time, we'll see we don't know if we're going to get more questions or not. So this is interesting. We'll see what happens. I do have their contact information up here as well, and I can bring it back up at the end too. But maybe I should have actually put that at the end. But I will bring up the questions that we got. And if you guys see anything, the panelists, if you see something we didn't quite finish or touch upon, go ahead and chime in.
So I would chime in on that very first one. And I'm sure everyone could see the slide, but my boss who is new does not always follow up on emails and projects. What is the best way to approach this and ask for follow-up without looking pushy? Or do I just need to be assertive and not worry about how it looks? So I read that question and I'm thinking tone is everything. You can ask for follow-up without being pushy or assertive. You can have a great smile on your face and be like, hey, you remember that question I asked you the other day? Did I miss an email about that? You don't have to be accusatory or anything like that. Tone and approach is absolutely everything. Remember, you want follow-up so you can perform in your job. That's why you want the follow-up. You don't want the follow-up because you want your boss to think, you know, you're telling your boss, you're not doing your job, you're not following up. So come at it from, I need to perform. I have a question. I'm kind of hung up right now. If you can answer that question for me so I can keep going, that would be awesome. So tone is everything.
Okay, great. How about the second one? Anyone have anything more with that? What to do with a supervisor who is ultra sensitive and assumes the worst of everyone every time? They have been coached and they are insistent that the only interpretation of a situation is the worst one. No ability to see it from another viewpoint.
I would try to find positive facts. Let me try to find an example. Say there's a new hire and this supervisor is like, oh gosh, another new employee. I'm sure they're going to be terrible, you know, whatever. And just really assuming the worst of everybody. Well, maybe you say, you know what? I worked with Jane on Tuesday and she was awesome. She shelved a cart in like 20 minutes and, you know, whatever. You want to be positive, but if you can express facts that are positive, it's kind of hard to disagree with those. So it's not just a matter of putting a spin on a situation, it's finding indisputable evidence that things are better than your boss thinks they are.
Mm-hmm. That is a hard one because you really can't change the way someone else is going to react to things. If your boss is that way and I would hate to say you might have to leave if you can't live with that situation. Is that okay to say?
It's absolutely okay to say. And you know what? Let's be honest. Sometimes, I mean, bosses aren't perfect. And there's some out there who are, you know, I don't want to say the word, but, you know, so sometimes it may just be how they are. And there's no changing. You know, we always say you can't change somebody's personality, but you can change their behavior. Well, if you're the employee, you're not in a position to change that behavior. And if it's just not working, it might be time to find something else.
Right. Or you can change how you might react to it and be like, oh, well, it's just the way it is and make the best of it. Let's see this last one. What are key points to help your boss realize that your position is just as important as a teacher? So I'm assuming that probably came from someone at a school library, possibly. I don't know if we've got any since we're all public libraries.
So I would say, and to chime in, that hopefully that all library workers would understand that positions that we're in, we're teaching every day. People that are walking in our doors, they're looking for information and trying to figure out how do we go about getting that information. So I try to make sure that I'm equipping staff to be able to handle taking that, whatever it is that they're trying to learn about. I want them to have as much knowledge as they need. I don't want a staff member to feel like they're not able to do their job efficiently and effectively. And I guess I'm kind of fumbling with this here, feel like I've kind of lost it. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. No, that is good. And that is a hard one. And we really don't know if this is coming from a school or not. Well, let's go ahead on to the next three. We've got the next three here. Anything stand out to anybody there they'd like to finish up with?
I think
Some
one
of
of
these
the ones I
people-
would say is kind of reiterate what you said, Paula, but sometimes if you've tried every avenue and you've hit roadblocks, then you have to decide, okay, is this where I want to stay, or this what I want to be? Do I want to continue with this? And decide, well, no, sometimes that's going to be the option. I mean, I did, there was a study and the majority of employees leave or quit because of a manager or supervisor. And that's unfortunate, I think, that it needs to go both ways, but I feel like if you're that unhappy and you have tried every avenue and all you've met is a dead end, no matter what way you go, then you have to realize it may not be the place for you and you may need to leave, which is sad to say.
Yeah, and I'd point out too, like Donna mentioned earlier, there may be a structure in place you can use if your direct supervisor check the handbook or what your next step might be. But I agree, if you're at the end of that and there's no other option, then unfortunately that may be your only choice.
Yeah. And these situations are hard too. It's like if you're having a problem with your direct supervisor, hopefully your library does have, if you don't have an HR department, that you have a grievance committee comprised of on your library board. At least you could take it to there, because usually it's what your library board, director, and then the staff or supervisors and staff. That's usually the chain of command you want to go through. But sometimes if you do have a problem with your library director, if there's a grievance committee, hopefully that would help the situation. Okay, well, I kind of threw this together at the last minute. I don't know if we're going to have. Oh,
Sorry, Paula.
ahead, sorry.
I'll add
Oh,
a couple
go ahead.
things to some of these questions here, if I may, because we still have 10 minutes, right?
Oh, yeah.
The first one, you and other staff have met with your direct supervisor, and yet only one of the other staff members communicated the issues to the director. So you don't ever want to gang up on a supervisor or a director, but there is power in numbers, and supervisors recognize patterns. Is this a squeaky wheel or is this a pattern? So if there's one person that goes to the director and complains, that person might just be, a pain in the director's mind. If the entire department expresses in some way, again, with a scheduled and structured meeting, the concerns, then it's pretty hard for the director to completely ignore those complaints. So for that person who submitted that question, if you can get all of your staff together on one page, again, very constructive, not like it's ganging up, or even submit feedback in different ways with email or anything like that. You want to make sure it doesn't seem like they've been coerced to do that because one person on the staff has an agenda. But I think, again, there is power in numbers. And for the last question there, working with a direct supervisor who's attention seeking, and then this individual is more passive, but feels they're only included in important conversations out of obligation. I think that's just a matter of an honest communication. You can explain to your boss that, you know what, I'm not always like to be out front in there, but I do want you to understand that I want to be a part of everything going on. So please invite me to these conversations. I have really good ideas. They may just not know that. If they don't know you very well and they see your personality as passive, they might interpret that as you're not interested in doing anything more. You're not interested in getting involved. So that's just a matter of an honest conversation that I think would be appreciated by your boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Any other ideas on or chiming in on these?
Well,
Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
no, go ahead, Donna.
I was only going to say one thing. This is coming from what I'm doing now. I would hope most managers and supervisors get training on how to deal with situations, how to have conversations with their staff, how to, I think it does help. It really does, especially when I've gone through a lot of scenarios and situations with the managers and supervisors, and they've been like, oh, well, I never really thought of it that way. It gives them another perspective. It gives them another thing to think of. I've been on both ends. I started out as a clerk, became a supervisor for 20 years, and now I'm the training specialist and I'm in HR. So I've seen all the different, aspects of this. So, I think it does help if you have some kind of training for your managers and supervisors and how to deal with how to deal with conversations, how to deal with their staff, how to create teamwork, all of that, plus knowing the policies, and you'd be surprised how many managers and supervisors I had that did not know what they could and not could ask in an interview. And so, all those things that they need to know.
Yeah. What I was going to say is the basic thread through all of this is good communication between yourself and your supervisor. And learning about what good communication is will go a long way. So I'll just plug LinkedIn Learning as a resource for a variety of topics. Check there if you're not sure where to start. It's free for all of us as library employees in the state. So, but if you're not sure what good communication looks like, find out for yourself. And maybe it can spread to other staff members too. But I think good communication through all of this is key.
This made me think about also, if you're having a specific problem, you're not sure how to deal with it, with that person, with your supervisor, and if you don't say anything about it, that supervisor might be missing a learning opportunity. So hopefully, again, they have, for their personality, they have to be open to also, and on the other end, if they need to be, something pointed out that they're not doing too very well, like the communication. So.
And your supervisor wants a happy staff. Your supervisor wants things to go smoothly and does not want people fighting and arguments and tears inside chairs. Okay, so whatever you can do to make that happen and communicate problems so that they can, solve those problems and make things smooth. That's what we want.
Right.
I would add to that also, if you're silent about things and you don't say anything until, let's say, there's an exit interview with the library board, and then all of a sudden you're unleashing all of this unhappiness and problems, this, that, and the other thing that had been going on for potentially months or years, then all of a sudden you have the library board sitting down with the director and saying, what's been going on here? And the director might say, wow, to be frank, I wasn't aware that the problem had escalated to this degree. So yes, I agree that the director does want to know if there is something that needs to be improved upon. I want to help you, but you have to help me in return.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, now we've got about 7 more minutes. I'm going to try to switch to this next thing and see what happens. Again, I'm kind of put this, I don't know if it's going to work, and I don't even know if we've got anybody asking any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open it and see what we have. What if your boss is a group as a board? How to talk with your boss when they ignore confrontational situations, and what do you do when you and other employees have multiple meetings with your boss about your concerns and they continue to push their way without giving you steps to be successful? They just keep listing big picture ideas instead of details. So anything in the next few minutes?
So I would add something to that last one, because me personally, I'm a very practical person. I'm not always like your big high level thinker. I'm more of like your soldier who's going to do the work. And I like a very concrete step-by-step, here's what I'm going to do. So you and other employees have had multiple meetings with your boss and they're not giving you steps to be successful. So ask for those steps. Where do I go from here? Say that, hey, I respect your big picture ideas. I hope we can get there too. But explain that how you work is you need more practical guidance. You're not sure how to get to those big picture ideas unless you're given guidance on what you need to do to get there. I think that would actually be appreciated. And again, just like Jason said, this common thread is all about communication, and open and honest communication is not as scary as it seems. But you know, if your boss is scary, it might be terrible. I'll be honest. I'm sorry.
And as I tend to think in big picture, I'm kind of the opposite of that.
I'll come work for you.
and what is helpful for me is if you have the steps in mind, bring them to me and let me see them. And, if it makes sense to me, then more than likely that's what we'll try. Because if forced to, I can think of the steps. I can make a plan. I can follow a plan and whatnot. But yeah, if you have steps in mind, please present them with your plan, talking about the great idea from before, earlier in the conversation. Bring that plan to me. I'm more than happy to check it out.
Okay, how about these other two? It looks like some pretty biggies.
The second one, I can tell you how to talk with your boss when they ignore confrontational scissors. I'm going to be honest and say, I did not like confrontational situations at all when I was a supervisor first. In fact, I would maybe shy away, but I think sometimes it's that phrase confrontational. I think if you go in with that frame of mind that it is confrontational, then that's what it is. And then when I really appreciated the staff that came to me and said it was a concern they had, or it was a even problem, but if you're going to put it as confrontational, I think it puts it in a negative tone from the beginning. And, I had to learn to phrase it a different way than confrontational, even for myself, and say, okay, how can I handle this concern, this problem, this issue, instead of making it confrontational in my mind. And I kind of encourage the staff to come to me and let's work together if it's a problem. Let's work together as a team. If you have an idea, let's work together. And that was always my thing. What can I do to help you? What can I do to help the situation? What can we do together? And so I think confrontational, I'm not a person that likes that term at all. I'll say it. So when they, hopefully if you way you phrase it, the next time they may not ignore it.
Yeah. We've got 3 minutes and we might just get caught off at the end. I put in the form for the LEU, and this last one, if there's anything quick you can say with the ones who are directors, how do you talk to what do you do with if your boss is a board?
So to that one, I would say it really depends on what the issue is. Some boards have a personnel committee. This is a smaller subset of boards that would address issues. You might be able to talk to somebody like that. You might just have one board member that you just kind of hit it off with a little bit more, have a little bit more of a personal relationship, and can kind of just talk with them about some issues that you're having. And then they might have recommendations on things you can do, or if they think you need to bring it to the entire board at one time. So it's, again, just a matter of communication and being honest. And yeah, it's not easy when we have 7 bosses to do some of that stuff. But and I was going to totally echo what Donna said about the thing with the confrontational situations. Don't go into it thinking it's going to be a confrontational situation. Be prepared if it becomes that, but try not to make it that from the get-go. Looks like we just had another one pop in here.
If you can, we've got 2 minutes.
What to do when you have a fellow supervisor who is so sensitive and refuses to make a decision. The boss complains about having no time, but isn't connecting that they don't have time. Oh, wait, because the supervisor, can you move it down? Paula, we can't. There we go. Thank you. Because this supervisor comes to them multiple times a day.
And if you don't have time, we can think about it later.
Do have to think about that one. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate you all being here. I can save these. I'm going to go back real quick and put, sorry, your contact info. I really appreciate you all being here and being on this panel. please, everybody, thank our panel. This has been awesome.
Thanks for coming at 3 o'clock on a Friday, Eastern time.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you to the rest of the panel.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I think we, again, covered all areas of the state with everybody.
Awesome. And thank you, Paula. You did a lot of work here today too, and we appreciate
Oh.
you.
Thank
you're
you,
welcome.
Paula.
You're welcome. Everybody have a great weekend. Relax. Hopefully do something fun.
Sounds good. Bye, everybody.